Okay, perfect. Good morning from El Paso, Texas. I know it's good afternoon for the rest of you. My name is Bonnie Perez Ramirez, and I am the Director for Partners Resource Network's PEN project. And for those of you that are not familiar with PRN, PRN is a nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. And we serve parents of children and youth with disabilities ages 0 to 26, as well as youth self-advocates ages 14 to 26. All of the parent training and information centers are funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. Here in Texas, we have 4 PTIs. Every state has at least one, but here in Texas, we have 4. And our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. The PEN project, if you all are familiar with the education service centers here in Texas, PEN project serves ESC regions 9, 12, and 14 through 19. I will go ahead and put in our contact information in the chat box. But I would like to let you all know what an honor it is for me to finally collaborate with Consolidated Planning Group. It's been a while that we've been trying to work something out, and I'm so happy that we're finally getting this done for you all. I hope you enjoy yourselves, and I'm going to go ahead and let Allison take over from here.
Thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to be with you as well. And for those families that are joining us for the first time, I'm glad you're here. If you've attended our webinars in the past, we are glad you're back. And I am in Sugar Land, Texas today. I saw some people in the chat box that are in Sugar Land as well. So Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We do a lot of education and advocacy for families in the special needs community. And so today we're going to be talking about options post-high school for, basically planning post-high school options and some things to keep in mind. So you are in webinar mode today. We are recording this session, and so after today, you will get a copy of today's slides and also a recording. And she's going to be monitoring the chat box. So as we go through the presentation today, if you have questions, do put them in the chat box. Don't be shy, because if you have a question, probably somebody else does as well. And we all can learn from each other in that way. So our webinars, we do have a YouTube channel, Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, that you can subscribe to for free. And all of our past webinars are out there. I think I was looking the other day, there's just under 200 webinars out there, and they're all topics relating to planning for special needs. Some of the things as parents that we need to keep in mind. So a lot of these webinars were born out of my own frustration when we were transitioning with one of my kids, got 4. I have 2 kids with special needs, and really, I just found the whole process. I eat, sleep, and breathe this. This is what I do, but I found the whole process very difficult at best. And so these webinars are out there to put tools and resources in your hands, and to make you know that you do have this, you've got this, you can do this, and it doesn't have to be as complicated and hard as it is. So we're definitely really glad you're here. At Consolidated Planning Group, we are nationally certified as Social Security advisors and also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we're able to answer questions like, how much should I set aside, or how much do I need to fund a special needs trust? What if I have a child that has care needs, that will have care needs long after I'm gone? How do I plan for that? We're able to set up ABLE accounts, transition planning, lifetime care planning, and really spend a lot of time talking to families about having money in the right buckets as it relates to preserving eligibility for state and federally funded programs in the future. Even if they don't qualify now, they may qualify in the future. So when it comes to planning for special needs, it is important that you work with a specialist. When we have kids with disabilities or loved ones in our life with disabilities, planning is different and it's tricky, and there's a lot of easy mistakes that families can make that cause things to not be set up properly and cause, eligibility issues for future programs. So that's why it's so important. So today we're going to be talking about educational options after high school for special needs families. The important thing about you guys getting a copy of today's slides is so you do not have to take copious notes on everything that we talk about on every website. This presentation has a whole bunch of links to various things that you might want to check out. So you'll be able to do that with the PDF of the slides. So first things first, when we're thinking about this topic, I think it's important to set realistic expectations. Where are you? Where is your child? And I always start with saying there's no comparisons. They aren't behind. They are where they are. And a lot of times as parents, maybe a lot of times we feel like our kids are behind. Maybe they are behind, but they are where they are, and they're moving forward, and they're making progress. And so it's really important to just keep an open mind and consider all options. What is their path? Is it a traditional path versus a non-traditional path? Maybe it's a non-traditional path first that moves into a traditional path later. There's all kinds of things to consider. We're going to be talking about higher education, but some of the things that we think about transition programs, post-high school. Some are connected to the public high school or the ISD that your student is attending. There are also transition programs that are outside of the high school that are private pay. What does this look like? Is it trade school, community college? There's obviously university degree programs, but there's also certificate programs and licenses. There are other things. I'm going to jump down to the Texas Workforce Commission, VR, vocational rehab. There are a lot of programs that are designed to help our students get to work and substantial gainful employment, not underemployment. And these programs are designed to close the gaps to the impediments to employment. There's a lot of testing. There is a lot of training to help close those gaps. The testing is there to determine what are those impediments to employment, and then the training is put in place to be able to close the gap on some of those things. Another thing to think about too is there are things called registered apprenticeships through the Department of Labor. So if you are considering a non-traditional path and are thinking of going to work or getting the training necessary to go to work, those are some things that you can consider as well. Also consider a reduced college course load. I also think about dual credit. So if your student is still in high school and they have the ability to take dual credit, where maybe they take one class kind of to try their hand at the community college, there's a lot of programs out there for that as well in the state of Texas with the community colleges. Consider living at home versus on campus. Would your student be capable of living at home? Living on campus versus living at home, and just know that there's a lot of programs out there that are kind of like a transitional living experience with some of the college programs that are out there for individuals with IDD. And then there's also additional partnership organizations that you can hire, through your own financial means to partner, with a kind of a living experience, which we'll talk about that. So think about the career path, ideal work settings, what might be a good fit. And just, again, I think the biggest thing is we live in this world of comparisons, and we're always comparing, and we're always looking at Facebook and all the great things that everybody else's kids are doing. And if we're struggling, or if, we feel like we're behind, sometimes it's hard to look at that. But just when we're really looking at, a realistic look at this whole big picture, we're helping our students and we're helping our family by meeting them where they are and taking that next step. There's no magic bullet that a kid has to graduate from college at 22, or that they have to go to college or community college or, ever, or right now at 18, because a lot of our students and our neurodiverse students, from a maturity level, they're often behind the neurotypical peers their age. And if you look at college statistics as a whole, a lot of, granted, we've got a lot of kids that are ready, But the statistics show us that a lot of 18-year-olds, neurotypical even, are not ready for college when the time comes at 18. So one of the things that we're going to send out today, later today when we send the slides and we send the recording, we are going to look at some post-high school options for special needs day and transition programs. We've compiled a list and it has links. It tells the name of the place, where they're located, a few other details. And it's compiled and it's from all over the state. We don't work for them, they don't work for us. But if you've been wondering, like, if your path isn't college right away, or you're thinking of maybe another type of transition program ahead of time, we're going to send you that list so you can look at that and see if there's any good fit for you out there. So there are 6 traits of students with learning disabilities that they need to have to succeed. And so we're looking at self-awareness, proactivity, perseverance, goal setting, present and use of effective social support systems, and emotional coping strategies. And so again, when we're thinking of neurodiverse versus neurotypical, a lot of our students, whether either one, are missing some of these traits of their ability to be successful. It's gonna interfere with that. So some of the things that we kind of talk about as we're thinking about transitioning and moving our students towards independence is, giving them a little bit more leash, or giving them, some of that room to grow, to learn some of these things, to where you're more of a, I don't know, maybe more of a mentor as opposed to I hate to use the word dictator as a parent, but a lot of times as parents, we've got younger children, we obviously tell them what to do, we show them what to do, we help them do it. But just being a little bit more on the sidelines and giving them a little bit of guidance, and then letting them move through those strategies, I think is an important thing. And this can be something like, for example, one of the things that I did with one of my kids during this time is, like, for instance, we're in the car, we're on our way to a new doctor, okay? And so I say in the car, okay, well, we're seeing this doctor for the first time. So what is your history? What are your diagnoses? What meds do you take? Why are we here today? So we kind of just role play this in the car. I said, so when the doctor comes in, he's going to look at me and I'm going to look at you. And if you need help, I'll be there to help. But I want you to communicate this, because I'm not always going to be there to communicate things that are important. So that would be an example of some of the things of just kind of letting go and kind of moving them forward, and just making them aware of some of those things that are super important, that they take for granted, that we just always do, and we take for granted, we just do it. It's part of being a parent. But so giving some of that back to them and letting them run with that is super, super important. Okay, so this is a busy slide, but one of the things that I found as we were kind of navigating these waters with our kids is that everything changes when we're going to higher education. So you guys have had the protection of your IEPs or your 504s, you're used to ARD meetings. These are things that you have become accustomed to on the high school level, but those 504s, those IEPs, they do not transfer to higher education, okay? So what do we need? What does your student need to be successful on a higher education level? So first things first, there is a such thing as an Office of Disability on the college level. So whether it's community college, whether it's the university, there's an Office of Disability. They might call it disability services. They might call it anything with the word disability in it. But basically, there is an office on all of these campuses that is there to help get accommodations in place for individuals with disabilities. So here's what I learned along the way. When you're thinking about colleges or universities, what you have to know is that the offices of disabilities are not created equally. They're not all the same. They don't run by the same rules. They're not run by the same people. Every single one of them is different. And so if you know there are specific accommodations that your student needs, maybe it's audiobooks, voice to text recognition software, extra time, there's so many different things, maybe it's a note taker. There's so many different accommodations that a person can get. but you want to research these offices of disability to find out what level of services do they have, what software do they have that they can provide that will help your student be success. You want to research these early. And honestly, what we did is we looked at schools that had the degree path that we were thinking about. And so we narrowed the schools down to those. And then what we started doing is interviewing the offices of disability, and we simply checked schools off the list that offices of disability were really not up to par or not able to provide us what we needed or wanted for success. So just think about that. And all of them have a website, okay? All of these schools have an Office of Disability website, which explains what you're going to have to do to get accommodations. So as I said, that these offices are not created equally and their rules are not equal either. They'll have an application for accommodations that will need to be filled out early. And again, fill these out early. Don't let your student start higher education with both hands behind their back if they don't have the accommodations in place that they need to be successful. Some of these requirements and what you can expect. So as you're planning, the future for your student, a lot of times they're going to want to see updated testing. Okay. So we've seen some relaxation on this since COVID. But again, every school is different. So usually they want to see testing like neuropsych testing, learning disability testing, for example, in the last 3 to 5 years. Some of them have relaxed that a little bit and are accepting older testing. Some facilities, and this is worth checking on, okay? Because usually this neuropsych testing is $3,000 to $5,000. It's not cheap. Yes, you've got some testing through the school, depending on the degree of the testing. It will depend on whether or not they're going to take the testing that the school did. But a lot of times they will accept older testing. So if your child has a disability that basically doesn't change, I mean, they grow up, but it doesn't change. Sometimes they'll accept outdated testing with maybe a letter from an MD, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a letter, from a doctor who has regularly seen your child, and they agree that the recommendations for the accommodations have not changed. I have seen schools accept that, so that may be something worth checking on. So another thing that we want to talk about is that when we're going to the offices of disability, a lot of our students need help. Maybe they have an intellectual disability, they need some help. The Office of Disability basically wants to talk to them, okay? Not you. They don't like the helicopter parents that much, but they do understand that people do have disabilities. So one of the things I always recommend is having a power of attorney in place when our students, and this is neurodiverse, neurotypical students, I do recommend when you have a child that turns 18 and they're going off to college, I do recommend having a power of attorney in place that gives you rights to speak on their behalf. And I also recommend a healthcare power of attorney. But at the schools, what they want is the FERPA. FERPA, FERPA. And so basically when your child goes to school, yes, they don't care that you pay the tuition. They're not talking to you unless that FERPA is on file and your student has signed it. So let's talk about that for a second too. What if we have a student that we are going to be having guardianship over or partial guardianship? So you're going to want to check with the school early, and remember, higher education, every school is different on what their rules are, whether it's the Office of Disability or just in general, everything that they do is different. Some schools higher education institutions will not accept your student if they are under full guardianship. So if you have some specific schools, if you know you're going to have guardianship in place, you might want to ask that question when you're doing your research. So basically the bottom line is reasonable accommodation is required if it doesn't pose undue hardship. So these are all things that you can, think about, and you can look at your IEP in 504, looking at your IEP in 504 and looking at the accommodations that your student has in place, knowing, these are the ones that we would be recommending or we would be asking for. kind of looking at those and having that ready. They don't necessarily have to do what your school did, but knowing what your student needs and kind of talking through what they can do for that is important. So if we're thinking about going to school, we talked about the Department of Labor, and that is the DOL.gov. And if you want to research, if we're not going to school and we're going to go to work, you can look at the DOL for those registered apprenticeships that I was talking about earlier. They're cool. So if you have a student, you know, here's the thing. I just have to take a pause and say, not all kids are cut out for college, and maybe they're not cut out right away. Maybe they're never cut out, and there's plenty of you know, successful people that didn't go to college, and that is okay. But these registered apprenticeships are kind of cool because they are really learning a skill and a job that could be substantial gainful employment while working. So there's a lot of them out there. They're all across the country, not just in Texas. And when it comes to accommodations on the job, you guys can look at the Job Accommodation Network as well. And another thing I want to talk about accommodations on the job, you know, we have wonderful services through the Texas Workforce Commission, Workforce Solutions. There are programs, and usually there is a VR counselor in your public school, in your public high school. There's definitely one in your area if you don't have one in your public high school. But again, the vocational rehab programs, they are designed to close the gap on impediments to employment. They're awesome. They have funding. They have state and federal funded, you know, programs, and they need to spend their money. And so they do that on a variety of services and testing and training and things like that. There's such things as job coaches. And then through Workforce Solutions, there are programs you may have heard of before too, that are called PREETs. They always call it PREETs, and everybody wants to know what that acronym is, but it's Pre-Employment Training Services. And they also have a program called SEAL. Maybe some of your kids participated in it, but it's the Summer Earn and Learn program. So these are all programs, and the cool thing about these programs that I want to tell you about, they start as early as age 14, so 14 to 22 for kind of the minor level, and then they have programs for adults as well. But 14 to 22, you can get your kids plugged in with that, and I recommend it. I mean, you know, basically, I always say, hey, what does it hurt? If they learn something, if they grow something, if you got, testing, like some of this testing that you might need to do, like, you know, the neuropsych testing that's relatively expensive. A lot of the testing, they do a lot of that. They do vocational evaluations, neuropsych testing, things like that. And those things are paid for through the program to help them determine what your students' impediments to employment are. So let's look at some of the educational option list. I always have a disclaimer. We don't work for them. They don't work for us. There's a lot of great programs out there. We want you to do your own research. You know, click the links, follow them. You know, what program might be appropriate for your student. There are, you know, certificate programs. There's horticulture programs. There's like hospitality programs where they're kind of trained to work in that type of environment. But all I want to tell you is just don't think that because your student has a learning disability, because they have intellectual disability, that college is not in the cards for them, because there are programs out there for them. So they are all over the state. So I'm just going to run through this, and you guys will have links to all of those. Most of these are in Texas. We do have a few. That we've kind of added that are outside of the state as well, for you to kind of take a look at. So one of the things that we look at, and these are just some of the other programs at some of the other colleges. Non-Pareil Institute is not a college. It is basically a transition training program, more in the IT world, and that is in the greater Houston area. But all of these programs out there, again, and they're growing more and more every day. So just know that they're out there. So here's another thing that I want to tell you. As a parent, I would suggest that you put together a spreadsheet. I know everybody hates it when I say that, but of, you know, when you're narrowing down these programs that might be a good fit for your student, create a spreadsheet, because I keep telling you that none of these schools are created equally. Their deadlines are different when they open their application process. How many seats they have available? Are they online versus in person? All of those different things might be different with these various programs. So you're going to want to keep track of it if you're evaluating multiple programs as opposed to just one. But because some of these seats are limited, you know, there's not that many available, you're going to want to know those deadlines and apply early, and maybe apply for multiple options, you know, in case you don't get the seat for your first choice. Okay.
We have a question,
So here,
Allison.
yes.
Is there an education option for the Rio Grande Valley?
We have them all over the state on this list. And then one thing that you're going to see on here is this Think College right here. thinkcollege.org is a website that is designed to list the college programs all across the country for kids with disabilities. So Think College is your friend. It's a good website. And we've just listed, you know, the ones that we've come across, the ones that we've heard about. We do have, you know, we do have several of them out there. If you have another program that you're aware of, or that you've had a student attend or had a good experience and you want us to, you know, add that to our list, we're always happy to do that. But just check those out, because there's a lot of good ones out there. And like I said, thinkcollege.net. It might be .org. We better check that. Will you check that for me? Will you kind of just check that in the, you know, and see if it's thinkcollege.net or .org. We might need to update that. Yeah. Here's a lady, again, she doesn't work for us, we don't work for her. Her name is JODI, GLOU, but we like her. She's an independent educational consultant. So let's say you just don't have a lot of time on your hand, and all these schools with all of their different rules and all of their different programs and all the stuff that you need to learn in their offices of disability, and I just don't have time for that. You might want to consider hiring an independent educational consultant. JODI is awesome. We've had webinars with her in the past, and you can hire her directly. She's cool because she has toured campuses all across the U.S., not just in Texas. And what she really does is she gets to know the family and she gets to know the student. And because she's aware of so many programs that are out there, she's able to make recommendations that might be really a customized fit for your student. So if you don't have that kind of time to do that research, or simply feel overwhelmed with all of the things that you need to know about this, consider hiring a consultant. I personally, in my experience, and I have had the older one with disabilities actually just graduated from college. So we've done this all the way through. When it comes to a college consultant, I personally, if my student has disabilities, learning disabilities, a disability in general, and needs accommodation, I'm hiring a consultant that has a background in special needs, not one that is a generalist consultant, or one that's, you know, typically works with the top 10% or whatever. You want to hire a specialist in this. Okay, so we did have it right at thinkcollege.net. Okay, for some reason I was thinking it was a .org. Here's another one that you might want to consider. You know, if the budget allows it, there's something called CLE, the College Living Experience. And this is a college learning experience, and it provides individual post-secondary guidance and instruction, academics and career development, independent living skills, social development. They live there, and they might like attend Blinn, you know, close to A&M, or maybe they start at Blinn and then they go to A&M. Maybe they start at the College Living Experience and don't go anywhere for a while and then transition into another program. They could actually even be living at the College Living Experience and attending a transition program. So these programs are awesome. They're nice, and the students that go there, they like it, they're happy there. They're not cheap, and you would have the expense with the housing and them living at CLE, as well as any additional transition program or college or university program as well. But it is definitely worth checking out. And a college living experience, they do have campuses outside of Texas as well, so you can check that out. One program that I want to talk to you about is the Campus Connection programs. Bloom Consulting, there's somebody you want to check out. Check out their website. They're pretty awesome. And they do a lot of things. In fact, Bloom Consulting is one of the companies that the Workforce Commission will utilize to conduct a vocational evaluation. A vocational evaluation is something that you can hire out and you can do yourself, through a company like Bloom. But if you're connected to VR and some of those other programs, they might request it and pay for that for you. So that's one thing that they do. They have, and so they work with students on closing their gaps on their independence, on their impediments to employment. But they also have a group home, and I think they have some more kind of in the works coming out. But what this Campus Connection program is, it's designed to support neurodiverse college students with various disabilities as they attend a post-secondary institution of their choice. And so they can work with students all across the country. They have an awesome program at Sam Houston State. They've got some good programs in Nevada. But it's basically a wraparound planning process, and they're going to work with them. They're going to mentor them and have kind of a coach, and they're going to help them navigate the waters of being a college student. So as a parent, you can take a step back, because the reality of it is most of our students want and need us to take a step back. Maybe it's just at my house, but anyway, most of them need us to take a little bit of a step back. But this is going to give your student a little bit of the autonomy to grow and to navigate, but with a coach that's helping them move along, and with a coach that kind of knows what their deficiencies are and kind of where they're coming from. This program goes alongside at the college. It's $1,000 per month private pay. And this is also something that might be comped and covered by vocational rehab as well. There's various sponsorship programs available. But anyway, check out their website. They're pretty awesome, and definitely worth looking at. So we've got so the Workforce Solutions, we've got training and educational scholarships. Workforce Solutions scholarships, they support training for some of the region's high skill and high growth occupation. So Workforce Solution, we've got some people in some various areas, in Texas, but we've got an 800 number on another slide, so you can find one in your area. But you can and you can click this web link to speak to a workforce professional in your area. Okay. So the pre-employment training services, we kind of talked about this a little bit. The pre-ET services, this is just kind of another link that you can kind of click on for that. And this is going to kind of go over a little bit more about the pre-employment services. This is that 800 number that we were talking about earlier that can kind of get you started with that process. And so again, I know I spent a lot of time talking about vocational rehab and Texas Workforce Solutions, and even if your kid is going to college from 14 to 22, I think it's a good idea to plug them in. The Summer Earn and Learn program, I think the kids work for 10 weeks at $10 an hour at 20 hours a week. So they help them find a job. They give them the coaching and it's just good programs, and that help them try their hand at things. We've seen students with social anxiety. We've seen parents that thought there's no way that my kid can work, that were able to get some help and some services and feel good about that path. Do we have any questions? Okay, I don't see any. Okay, yeah. Perfect. And yeah, so for anybody that just joined, if you joined late, this webinar is being recorded, and you are going to get a copy of today's slides with the links, and also a copy of the recording, so you can go back and check that out. So when we start talking about higher education, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is, how much does that cost? So the truth is higher education is expensive, whether you're going to the community college or you're going to the university or you're paying out of pocket for a transition program. So let's talk about funding for higher education, community college, or the university. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, okay? This becomes available each year on October 1st for the following school year. So you're gonna wanna complete this each year, even if you think you make too much money, because everybody says they make too much money and that they shouldn't complete it. You still need to complete it. And the reason you need to is that a lot of scholarships, either school-based or community-based scholarships, still require that you complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is changing. A lot of the rules of the FAFSA are changing. You might want to educate yourself on that. Some of the things that are going away, like there used to be like heavy discounts of your expected family contribution. Like, so if you had more than one student in college at the same time, they would take that expected family contribution and divide that by the number of people that are going to college. That is one that's kind of on the chopping block. How they're counting certain assets is changing as well. So if you've done the FAFSA before for another student, and you haven't done it in a while, you do want to educate yourself on that. So as it relates to the FAFSA, this is not something for you to tell your student to do, okay? They've got to have help with this. And as it was before, you have a login and the student will have a login, but they're going to need help. There's a tool that links your tax return. It's complicated. They ask financial questions. There's no way your student would know. And even if they did, you don't want them, you don't want them to know those things. So a parent definitely needs to be involved with the FAFSA. So when it comes to scholarships, community-based, school-based, disability disease-based, sport-based, music or band-based, there are a ton of scholarships. This is a second spreadsheet that I suggest that you make. If you're wanting to get some funding from scholarships, which I'm a firm believer in. I think that there's a lot of scholarships out there that aren't very big or very exciting, but there's also a lot of other scholarships out there that are pretty big and pretty exciting. And even for your student with disabilities, there's a scholarship out there. So just research them early, know when the application opens up, when the deadlines are for receiving applications, because once again, they're all different. And so here's something shocking that I learned whenever my student was going to college. So she was a senior in high school. And, you know, when we were starting the school year, like right about now, I was thinking, well, you know, we'll do our scholarship applications and our college applications in December over winter break or whatever. And I started researching earlier and then realized, oh my gosh, no, we need to really start this process. The FAFSA opens up October 1st. A lot of the scholarships for the following school year. So your student is a senior in high school. A lot of those scholarship applications open up in the fall, and a lot of them are even closed by December 1st. So if you wait till winter break to apply for some of these scholarships, you miss the boat. And this is when your child is a senior in high school and they're planning to go to college the following year. So know these deadlines, when they open up, when they close, and apply accordingly. And I know the summer is over, but for anybody that is attending, maybe they have a student that is starting their junior year this year. My advice for you for next summer is part of the summer assignment for your student is to work on their essays. Their college essays, every school is different. There's usually 3 essay prompts, and they're basically the same. Some schools require all 3 essays. Some schools only require 1. But my recommendation for the summer is to have your students complete their essay over the summer, hire somebody to review them. Don't write them for your student, and have them ready, because what happens is when school starts, it's go time. It's busy. It is senior year. It's tough. It's hard. We're applying for college. We're applying for scholarships. Trying to write an essay on top of all of their other assignments once school started is ridiculous. So you might have some tears during the summer because they're mad that you're making them do the essay, but I promise you it's good advice and you'll be really glad that you did it. So 529 savings plans, that's another place that we can pay for college. So these are the college savings plan. In 2014, they also amended the law for the 529A ABLE accounts. We can help people set up ABLE accounts, but an ABLE account is classified under the 529 tax code. And it's for basically achieving a better life for an individual with a disability. So the cool thing about an ABLE account is it grows tax-free, and the withdrawals are tax-free as long as it's used to achieve a better life for an individual with a disability. So what that means is an ABLE account can pay for college, but it can pay for a variety of other things as well, such as, basically anything, a transition program, it could be copay, it could be medicine, it could be adaptive equipment, it could be a car, it could be respite care, caregiver services, it could be a vacation for the individual with a disability and a caregiver to go with them. Now, don't get crazy on having the whole family go on a vacation, but basically, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, it can be paid for. Now, we've talked a lot about vocational rehab, VR. And VR may also be able to provide support if it's in line, financial support for higher education, if it's in line with the established plan for the individual to find competitive employment. Now, they do have some rules, and they would go over those with you, and they do have some financial rules. They have a calculator, like based, depending on how much money you make, but don't assume because you make decent money that there's no funding or anything like that, because that's not the case. And we've seen the VR program pay for the majority of an individual school. We've seen them help defray some of the costs. So that is something, another reason that you might want to get your kid plugged into VR. Okay, so as far as the ABLE accounts and how it works, the beneficiary is an account owner. I just want to talk about this a little bit more because our audience are families that have a loved one, or maybe professionals that work with families that have disabilities. An ABLE account is a little bit different than a 529C. So even though it's under the same tax code, in a 529C, the account owner is whoever sets it up, right? And then your child is the beneficiary in a 529C. But on a 529A for ABLE, the account owner, the beneficiary is the account owner. So your loved one with a disability is the account owner. Income earned in the account is not taxable, and contributions are not deductible. But the cool thing about the ABLE account, and for some of you, this has never mattered. You don't qualify for SSI or Medicaid. You make too much money. Your student is under 18. But what happens when our students with disabilities turn 18, it's based off of their assets and income, not yours, when it comes to qualifying for such programs as SSI and Medicaid. But so the money inside of an ABLE account does not count against them for that. So SSI is a means-based program. Right now it's $841 a month, and it comes with Medicaid. But the person has to be disabled, and they have to be indigent, okay? So in the eyes of the Social Security Administration, indigency is less than $2,000 or less in their name, okay? So if they have more than $2,000 and we're looking at transitioning, you're gonna wanna get some of their money into an ABLE account so it will not be counted against them for SSI and Medicaid purposes, okay? So the last thing that you need to know about the ABLE account, so first things first, if you have a 529C, so because one of the things that comes up all the time is people say, hey, I have a 529C for my loved one with special needs, but I don't think he's going to college, or I don't know if they're going to go to college, and what are we going to do with all that money, because we don't want to be, penalized for taking the money out. So number one, you can transfer $16,000 a year from a 529C to a 529A, and it's not a taxable event, okay? So contribution limits are $16,000 a year. If the student is working, if the individual is working, they can put an additional $12,880 into their ABLE account. The growth is tax-free. The withdrawals are tax-free as long as it's for a qualified distribution. And again, if it's construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. Non-qualified distributions would be subject to ordinary income tax as well as a 10% penalty. The main thing that you need to know on the ABLE account is that there is a Medicaid payback. So if something happens to your loved one and there is remaining money in their ABLE account, there is a such thing as a Medicaid payback where they'll do a calculation to see if they need to be paid back for any monies that they have paid to your student. It seems silly. It is crazy to me, and a lot of people think it's crazy, and it's kind of on the chopping block from a law perspective. But it hasn't got chopped yet. So everybody would like the Medicaid payback provision in an ABLE account to go away, and maybe it will, in the coming years. And it's just something that's being talked about. The main thing that you need to know about the ABLE account is you never want to have more than $100,000 in this ABLE account, because if you do, then they will disqualify for SSI and Medicaid. As long as the account balance is less than a total of $100,000, then it won't be counted. If they go one penny over $100,000, it will be counted, and they will basically lose their SSI and Medicaid qualifications. So I'm just going to run through this, and so I can keep moving. These are just an example of some of the things, but that you can pay for out of an ABLE account. But most of the expenses that you cannot pay for via the Special Needs Trust without a reduction to SSI, you can pay from the ABLE account. So basically, SSI is for food and shelter. And so they want you to use the SSI for food and shelter. So if you have a special needs trust, you can pay for food and shelter out of a special needs trust, but there is going to be a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So instead of $841 a month, they would get $561 a month. If you need to pay additional food and shelter expenses, you want to pay them out of the ABLE account, and then there would not be a reduction to SSI. Okay, so for this, I'm going to run through this quickly. I'm not going to talk about all of these links. We're just kind of going to talk about scholarships here for a second. Scholarships, there are a lot of scholarships out there. And again, this isn't a feat for just your child. This is a good parent partnering exercise with your student if you're wanting to get funding for your student and look at some of these scholarships. One thing that I always want to mention on this webinar is if you have adopted children, you adopted them through the state of Texas, like through the Department of Family Services or what have you, the DFPS system, or they've been a part of the foster care system in the past, there is a tuition waiver for them. And so basically, if they go to school in the state of Texas and state schools, not private schools, their tuition will be waived. So I just want to mention that. There's a link for that up there. So as it relates to your child and any diagnoses they have, you may want to ask for a list of scholarships from the child life specialist at the specialty clinic that you go to. For instance, Texas Children's, Baylor, Cook. There's so many facilities out there, but ask the child life specialist if they have any scholarships that they're aware of. There's a lot of scholarships out there for students with disability. The Terry scholarships, the Terry Foundation is one that is near and dear to my heart. This is an awesome scholarship program. It runs in perpetuity. It's one of the largest scholarship foundations in the U.S., and they are domiciled right here in Houston. And so the Terry Scholarship is an awesome scholarship, and it basically is a full ride scholarship. And they're looking for students that show leadership potential, character, a good scholastic record and ability, and a financial need. And it may be some or all, but think of volunteering and giving back in the community, meaningful volunteering. And I'm not taking it away of volunteering at your church, but everybody says they volunteer at their church, and most of them don't that much, or it's very little. But meaningful volunteering, get your students volunteering, get your students giving back to the community. There's all kinds of organizations that need their help. They're going to get service hours, number one, and those service hours will go, this is a beautiful scholarship. It's awesome. And it'll go a long way with that. But not only that, when they're working with these organizations, they're paving a way for letters of recommendation when it comes to college, because a lot of families struggle or they have some family friend write some half-hearted, favor of letter of recommendation. But these, when you get your student volunteering and giving back in the community, those letters of recommendations that will come in from these organizations that they volunteer with, as a mom, you couldn't have wrote them better yourself. Okay. So these are is an example of some of the scholarships. The Terry Foundation Scholarship is at all of these universities in Texas, and it is for Texas schools. There is no scholarship for outside of Texas. But the cool thing is when you apply for the Terry Foundation Scholarship, you apply for it through the university that you're applying to. And so if you're applying to multiple universities, you could technically apply for the Terry Foundation Scholarship at every single one of these universities and see if you get it or if you're asked for an interview. So it's just a big one, and a lot of people don't know about it, so I like to talk about it. So basically, one of the things that I want to tell you, if you can think it up, there's probably a scholarship for it. So any diagnoses that your student has, there are scholarships for your neurotypical kids who have siblings with disabilities as well. Maybe it's autism, siblings of anything, siblings of cancer patients, anything. There's just a ton of them out there. So get creative. We put some links out here so you can check them out and what might be appropriate for you. There's just a lot of them out there, so you can add these to your spreadsheet. You can kind of research them. Is this viable to you, to your student? Will it work? And then you can put them on your spreadsheet of things that you want to apply for. And again, keeping in mind, when does the application open up? When does it close? What is the scholarship amount? And what are the requirements of the scholarship? And so for me, a little piece of advice that I would give is, when applying for scholarships, the interesting thing is some of these scholarships are going to give $25,000, and other of these scholarships might give $500. What is that going to pay for? One book? And so I had to be creative. There's only, so much time. So we didn't spend a lot of time applying for this super small scholarships, because some of those super small scholarships, their application process is as long and ridiculous as these giant scholarships. So choose wisely. You only have so many hours in the day. Just think about that and think about what strategy you want. So these are just some additional on that as well. So some books to consider: Colleges that changes lives. This is a good book. There's probably an update to that book too. And then we've got the Fifth Guide to Colleges. These are both books that you can buy on Amazon. The Colleges that change lives. I think that there's a space for that, because they typically have really good programs, offices of disability, may have smaller class sizes. It's like a family. I mean, it's just, it's really worth checking into depending on what your students' needs are. But there's some real cool schools all across the country that are different than your traditional, big giant schools and big giant classrooms that maybe your student might not be a good fit for. Maybe they need more attention. Maybe that smaller class size is going to be amazing for them. Maybe they're going to be in a place where they're going to be pushed to grow, and they're going to grow. So just think about that. So we're kind of coming, to the end of our meeting today, and this is something that we always kind of have at the end of our presentations, of things that should be on your special needs planning radar. These are all things, everything that we've talked about today, anything, whether it's an ABLE account or it's SSI and Medicaid, future care cost estimates for our loved ones with disabilities, they all could and do have an hour-long webinar to tell you what you need to know, what you need to do, and when you need to do it. So these are things that should be on your special needs planning radar. You can tune in to future webinars with us to learn more about these things. You can dial into our YouTube channel to look at past webinars on these topics if you need a little help with that. But some of the things, let me just hit the highlights of something. When it comes to planning for special needs, what we say to parents is, We want you to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And so the thing is for our loved ones with the disability, the funding is coming from us, right? And our retirement is coming from us. We're going to be funding our own retirement 25 to 35 years. But so when we plan for the worst and we hope for the best, when the best happens, we just have a more lucrative retirement, okay? So a lot of our families that we work with, they say, my student isn't there yet. We haven't arrived yet. We're hopeful and we're optimistic, but we're not quite there yet. And so if that's you, you're not alone. They're getting there, and we're moving forward. But just know, some of the other things to keep on your radar. Make sure that you've gotten yourself on the waivers, your child on the Texas Waivers Interest List, HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice, CLAS. There's deaf, blind, multiple disabilities. There's multiple waivers out there. If you don't know, check out that waiver webinar. It'll tell you how to get on the interest list, how to find your local intellectual disability authority, and get connected with that. Do we have a question?
No, we don't.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, meet my team. Oftentimes I'm the voice on the webinar. Michelle does a lot of our webinars as well. But we work on a collaborative team at Consolidated Planning Group, so we just like to have some faces with our names. And as always, we look forward if we've talked about something and you've got a personal situation that you want to talk further about, or you need to get started on the planning process, you need help, kind of navigating SSI and Medicaid and next steps, you can reach out. We're always happy to schedule a free consultation. We've got a link for our Facebook and our YouTube channel here. And so, again, I would just like to thank all of you for attending. Thanks for having us, and we look forward to partnering with you again. I'm happy to take any additional questions. We just have a couple minutes left, but if anybody has any additional questions, I'm happy to take those now.
And I've gone ahead and put our contact information in the chat box as well. And to remind you that September 14th, we will be having Ms. Allison again on transitions, tips for launching your special needs teen into adulthood. So we look forward to having you all join us for that presentation as well. I don't
Absolutely. I look forward to being back with you guys. So, all right. Well, I hope everybody has a great afternoon, and thanks again, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.